The letter that ended my career arrived on a Tuesday morning in November, and it described a version of my performance that bore no relationship to any document I had ever been shown. I want to tell you about a set of performance reviews. Specifically, I want to tell you what was in them and what was not in them, and why the difference between those two things became the most important legal fact in my case. Stay with me, because what my solicitor found when she lined those documents up against the timeline of my medical history is something that even she said she had not seen presented quite so clearly in 15 years of practice. My name does not matter. What matters is that I was 44 years old, a senior project manager at a technology consultancy, working remotely from home in Bristol. I had been with the company for 15 years. 15 years of delivering projects on time, managing teams of between 6 and 14 people, and receiving, without exception, performance reviews that rated me as meeting or exceeding expectations. Every year, without a single exception, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in July 2022. I disclosed my diagnosis to HR in August 2022. I did this because I needed to discuss reasonable adjustments under the Equality Act 2010. I needed flexibility on days when fatigue was significant. I needed the option to reschedule calls at short notice when symptoms were acute. I was not asking to work less. I was asking for the structural flexibility that would allow me to continue working at full capacity on the days when I was well, which was most days. HR acknowledged the disclosure. They noted the adjustments. They told me the company was committed to supporting disabled employees. They said all the right things in an email dated the 19th of August 2022, an email I printed and filed in a folder the same day, because something about the particular professionalism of it made me want a physical copy. My performance review in October 2022 was the first one in 15 years that rated me as partially meeting expectations. Partially meeting expectations. The review cited concerns about my responsiveness during core hours, delays in project communications, and a perceived reduction in my strategic contribution to team discussions. I read it 4 times. I did not recognise myself in it. My projects were on track. My team had not raised concerns. I had flagged every instance of delayed communication in advance and documented the reason. I had done everything correctly. I requested a meeting with HR to discuss the review. The meeting was on the 3rd of November. I went into it with notes, with my project delivery records, with the communication logs. I presented my case methodically. The HR lead, a woman called Sandra, listened carefully, asked questions, and told me she would take my points on board and review the assessment. The assessment was not changed. Let me stop here for a moment, because we are about 2 minutes in, and I want to reframe what you have just heard. You might be thinking a bad performance review, an uncomfortable meeting, a company that was perhaps not as supportive as it claimed. That sounds frustrating, but manageable. I thought the same thing in November 2022. I want you to hold that thought, because what I am going to tell you in the next few minutes is what I did not yet know. And what I did not yet know is what makes this story something other than a frustrating workplace dispute. In February 2023, I was placed on a formal performance improvement plan. The PIP cited the same concerns as the October review, now formalised into targets with a 12-week review period. The targets were measurable, but the baseline against which I was being measured had, without explanation, shifted. I was being assessed against a standard that had not existed in my previous 15 years of employment, a standard that, as I later established, had been introduced into my performance framework at some point between August and October 2022. I did not notice this at the time. I noticed it later. That is the thing about the detail that saves you. You often do not see it until someone else shows you where to look. I was dismissed on the 28th of April 2023. The stated reason was failure to meet the required standard during the performance improvement period. I was given 4 weeks' notice and an invitation to appeal. I submitted the appeal. It was unsuccessful. I contacted ACS on the 8th of May. I instructed a solicitor named Catherine on the 15th. Catherine had 12 years of employment discrimination experience with a specific focus on disability cases. She asked me in our first meeting to bring every document I had, every email, every review, every HR communication since August 2022. I'd kept all of it. She spent 90 minutes going through the documents, and then she looked up and said, "I need you to request your full HR file under a subject access request. Today, if possible." I submitted the SAR that afternoon. Now, this is the part of the story where I need to tell you about Claire. Claire was a project coordinator who had worked alongside me for 3 years. We were not close friends, but we had always got on well. The easy professional relationship of people who have collaborated long enough to trust each other's judgment. In June 2023, 6 weeks after my dismissal, Claire sent me an email. She sent it to my personal address, not my old work address. The subject line said, "I hope this is okay to send." She had forwarded me an internal HR document. She had been copied into it in error during a routine HR circulation, had read it, had realised what it was, and had sat on it for 3 weeks trying to decide what to do. She said, in her covering note, that she knew she might be putting her own position at risk. She said she thought I should have it anyway. The document was an internal HR briefing note dated the 16th of September 2022, 4 weeks after I disclosed my MS diagnosis. The briefing note was addressed to my line manager and was titled, and I am reading this exactly, "Considerations for Performance Framework Adjustment in the Context of Anticipated Capability Concerns." Anticipated Capability Concerns. Written 4 weeks after my diagnosis, before any performance concern had been formally raised, before the October review, before the PIP, the HR department had written an internal document planning a performance framework adjustment based on anticipated future capability concerns connected to my medical condition. They had not told me. They had simply adjusted the framework and then applied it. Catherine received the SAR response the following week. The full HR file confirmed the timeline. The briefing note was in the file. The performance framework adjustment was in the file. The baseline shift I had noticed in the PIP was now explained. They had changed the standard against which I was being measured within weeks of learning I had MS, had not disclosed this to me, and had then used the new standard to build a case for my dismissal over the following 8 months. I want to give HR something here because I have thought about it carefully. The people in the HR department were not acting out of personal malice toward me. They were managing risk the way HR departments are trained to manage risk, which is to say they were looking at a long-term employee with a progressive neurological condition and making a calculation about future capability and future cost. That calculation was illegal, but it was not random. It was institutional logic applied to a situation that institutional logic should not be applied to. Understanding that does not make it acceptable, it does make it explicable. Catherine filed the Employment Tribunal claim on the 2nd of July 2023. Disability discrimination under the Equality Act. 2010 direct discrimination, discrimination arising from disability, and constructive unfair dismissal. The schedule of loss included loss of earnings, injury to feelings, and compensation for the manner of dismissal. The preliminary hearing was in September 2023. The employment judge reviewed the disclosed documents, including the September briefing note, and made several observations about the timeline that Catherine later described to me as unusually direct for a preliminary hearing. The judge noted that the sequence of events, specifically the proximity between the disclosure of diagnosis and the adjustment of the performance framework, would require detailed explanation from the respondent. The respondent's legal team requested time to take instructions. The first settlement offers arrived in October 2023. £24,000. We declined. The second offer in November was £38,000. We declined. In January 2024, with the full hearing listed for March, and the briefing note now the centrepiece of the tribunal bundle, they offered £61,000, a written apology, and a commitment to review their disability adjustment procedures. We accepted. £61,000, a written apology, procedural review. Catherine said it was an excellent outcome. I believe her. I also know that I spent 8 months being told my performance had declined, when my performance had not declined, that I had spent those 8 months doubting my own professional judgment at exactly the point when my energy for self-doubt was least available, and that the written apology, when it arrived, was 3 sentences long and contained the word regret twice without ever using the word wrong. I still work in project management, freelance now, which suits me better than it would have suited me before any of this. On the good days, I work from my desk at the window with the light coming in from the west in the afternoons, and it is quiet except for the sound of my keyboard, and I do not think about any of this at all. On other days, I think about Claire, about what it cost her to forward that email. She is still at the company. We have not spoken since. I do not know whether anyone found out what she did. I do not know whether she is okay. I have wanted to contact her to say thank you, and I have not done it, and I am not sure I ever will, and I am not entirely sure why. Here is what I want to ask you. Claire took a professional risk to send me a document that changed the outcome of my case. She did not have to. She got nothing from it, except the knowledge that she had done the right thing, and yet I have never thanked her directly. Is that something you would be able to live with? Because I am still trying to decide whether I can.